Welcome back, and in this segment we will be talking about King Tutankhamun, we'll be talking about his history, we'll be talking about the latest and most recent theories concerning him, as well as some of the most recent studies on himself, whether as CAT scans on his mummy or even on his tomb as well. And we're joined in the studio by tour guide and Egyptologist, Mr. Samir Abbass, to shed more light on that topic. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir. Well, first of all, talking in general about King Tut, and of course we all know that he's one of the most important pharaohs, not because of his reign, but maybe also because all the belongings that were discovered in his tombs, actually he is the only one that we can talk about all the belongings that toured all around the world.
So King Tutankhamun is an exceptional pharaoh for different reasons. So as you mentioned, he's not that important pharaoh. He wasn't even in the king list back in that time, the list which is put by the ancient Egyptian historians. But the discovery of his tomb and the conditions for being untouched, with the complete collections there, with the golden stuff there, and for the propaganda around it as well, that's make him famous, and that's became a very good example for us of how we can promote other pharaohs as well. And King Tutankhamun, and first of all, today, as you introduced, there is lots of interesting subjects to talk about. I'm pretty sure that there is many episodes has been made about Tutankhamun, but I think that the best thing to do today is to shed some light on the most interesting and the new readings in King Tutankhamun history. And I will start with that, with the name, and that's very good timing for the pictures to show, because we have two cartouches which is showing the names of Tutankhamun. We have the birth name and the coronation name. The birth name, which was before the Dak or Sarah and Tutankhamun, Heka Yuno, and the coronation name is Nebkheburu-Ra. The coronation name, by the way, that was more famous back in the ancient time, Nebkheburu-Ra. The interesting fact about Tutankhamun is not his birth name. His birth name is Tutankhaten. A huge difference between Amon and Aten, and has been changed, could be after his death, or maybe before his death, into Tutankhamun.
But not him himself.
Actually, no, so we are talking about
Because,
the same pharaoh.
as you mentioned, it differs a lot from Aten to Amon.
Exactly, it is the same pharaoh, but there was a political debate.
That would bring us to talking about the shift in the religion, so that people would understand why the name was changed. So would you give us a glimpse why the name was changed and how he was born during the time of Akhenaten and so on and so forth, please?
That makes him another exceptional pharaoh, because rarely a pharaoh will change his name. And that happens in this family twice. For his father, Amon-Hotep IV, he changed his name into Akhenaten, the famous Akhenaten, and he named his son Tutankhaten after a god known as Aten, and that was introducing or reintroducing of Aten in that particular time period. We are talking about the 18th dynasty, 3,400 years ago, roughly speaking. In reintroducing Aten in a new way to be the king of God, or the only God according to other explanation or other readings, to replace the power of Amun, and Amun as a god and his priests, they were nations. They're like the big corporation today, and it was corrupted in that time, in the end of the 18th dynasty. Other words, they very powerful, and their power started to threaten the pharaohs, and that's why the father decided to walk away from the religion of Amun and introduce a god which is not new, but reintroduce Aten, in a way to put an end for the power of the priesthood of Amun. Of course, that's only one theory. There's lots of theories about the conflicts, the political religious conflicts in this period of time, which could be deserves to have another episode in its own. But what's important for us now is to understand, the name has been changed. The name of Tutankhamun is famous as Tutankhamun is not his name. His name is Tutankhaten, and possibly has been changed after his death.
But we don't have an evidence that he refused the religion of Aten, or went back to the power of the priests of Amun at that time.
So, that's why I brought some illustrations with me. Maybe we can jump to the pictures in the photo number 7.
can we go chronologically according to what you've given us? Because usually it will take them some time.
No. So in if we can show picture number 7 now, number 7, please. So in picture number 7, that's the layout of King Tutankhamun, by the way. We have different chambers, by the way. His tomb is the smallest tomb in the Valley of the Kings. And in the smallest tomb in the Valley of the Kings, here we are, that's the pictures, I'm waiting. So this is a picture which I took myself on his throne, which is the most famous piece in the Egyptian Museum. And that is in the side view. I made a highlights with a red circle on the name, showing the name Aton, not Amon, on his throne, which is that's his original name. And there is a slight small difference between the word Aton and Amon. The only difference is only in one character, in one symbol. It is a half circle, which is the top one, half circle, but in Aton it is rectangular with some like other dashes on the top. There is another illustrations, if we can look at it, number 8, please.
Okay, so it's
That
the
will
next
be
picture.
The next picture will be number 8, and that is in the same throne as well. That in the same throne, you can see next to the crown there is 2 oval shapes, 2 cartouches, which have the coronation name and the birth name again. And the one which have a circle on it, if we can zoom in on it, you'll find that the top one is the same, Tutankhamun, but has been changed into Tutankhamun by changing the half circle into the other symbol represent Amon. That's on the same throne, but I think that even the throne has been modified because the location where they put these oval shapes is not necessarily from the time when they made the throne. That is a modification of the throne itself, and that was our first interesting fact about Tutankhamun, which is his name. That's what his father named him, and has been changed into Tutankhamun. Who did that? I don't think that the pharaoh himself he did it, but I think that
it's commonly believed that when his father passed away and he was still a child, the co-regent or the one responsible for him returned to the cult of the Amon, and that's when the shift occurred. So you're not pro such a theory.
So do you say that it happens during his father's time?
Following the death of his father.
That's exactly following the death of his father.
When he ascended the throne and he returned to Luxor, because his tomb was in Luxor, that it is believed that that's when he changed his name, because due to the pressure of the courtiers and the priesthood of Amon, he had to return back from Amarna or Akhetaton back to Luxor. So do you disagree with that point of view?
That's how we will come to our next point, which is his tomb. His tomb is the smallest tomb in the Valley of the Kings. And that is not his original tomb as well, because the original plan A is to be buried in a new Valley of the Kings. That's in Amarna, in Armenia today. And in the new city which is built to replace Luxor as the capital of Egypt, there is a new Valley of the Kings has been built there and still there. And there is a big tomb, a big family tomb for Akhenaton and his family. And that's possibly the place where Tutankhamun should be buried.
But did we find any names for King Tutankhamun or Tutankhamun there, Mr. Samir?
No. So far, no, because the site is still not well exhibited. But I have, first of all, what I'm taking it is just theories. We are not about facts yet, just theories.
No, I just because it's a new theory,
I have an interesting thing, which is also I found myself. I took a picture for it on the shrines in the museum. If we can jump into picture number 10, please. Illustration number 10. And yes, here we are. These pictures from the wooden shrine, which is covered in gold. So I made also a circle on marks on the shrine. These marks on the shrine, which is saying that is the front face, the shrine number 2. That is the translations of the hieroglyphics written here. So what happened here is another exceptional thing, is the carpenters who built the shrines, they knew that they cannot take the shrines as one piece and put it inside. They have to take it apart and rebuild it around the king coffin inside the tomb. So to do that quick, they have to leave marks so they can assemble that quickly, like the carpenters doing today. But they were in a great rush because they even forgot to leave to read their marks, and that's a big mistake. They will not make this mistake unless they are in a great rush. Not only, they try to scratch, if we make a zoom in on these pictures, to scratch some of them to read them quickly. And they figure out that, so there is no time to do that. It is as if they have been pulled out from the tomb for the burial of the king. Because the burials customs and the burial traditions, the mummifications, takes nearly 70 days. And I think that King Tut tomb not being built, or they have been started building it until he died. And it was Amun priestess. That's another theory, okay? That's Amun priestess. After the death of the king, they insisted to move his body, to change his name in the record, in the throne, and to build him a tomb in the Valley of the Kings, just to prove a point that Amarna has been abandoned, and the Valley of the Kings in Luxor is still the resting place of the pharaohs. And another reason, another way to prove that is the tomb is very small. The decorations is unfinished.
But maybe because he died at a young age unexpectedly?
So he ruled for 19 years. And
but if you look at the tomb of Ramses II, or even some of Seti I, or even Ramses VI, some of them are incomplete, and they ruled for years and years, and they are longer than Tutankhamun, and they are still incomplete.
So, as I mentioned, this subject could be a different episode, so I know that will be another theory as well, which is he might start.
It has always been something that it happened actually when it comes to all pharaohs, that each and every pharaoh, when he comes, he demolishes all the achievements of the pharaoh before. But from here, I want also to continue talking about Tutankhamun as a pharaoh, and definitely there are many interesting things that we would like to learn more about King Tut actually, especially when it comes to promoting tourism. People, they come from across the globe to come in particular to see King Tut, for example, belongings. In addition, we have seen the successful actually tours of the belongings of King Tut around the world actually.
From my personal experience, there is many people who came to tour Egypt in the age of 50s, 60s, and 70s, and 80s. The main reason is because they've seen King Tut collections, they read about King Tut, and they've seen these collections. And even the children, because
they are learning this at school as well.
Definitely, yes. And they traveled around, so when the collection, that was in the 1970s, when the collection traveled around the world, so they were queuing for hours to have a chance to see the collection, and that's what brought them to Egypt. And that will be a good lesson for us of how to promote for Egypt in a good way. King Tut is only one pharaoh of another wonderful pharaohs we have, and we have a wonderful achievements, a wonderful connections of other pharaohs, even in the museum, the Egyptian museum, but we haven't managed to promote for that well to attract people attention.
Before the interview, you told me that you have an interesting theory regarding the death of King Tutankhamun as well. Would you tell us about it?
Sure, but as we agree, we have no time to discuss all of the theories.
No,
I will mention
yes,
exactly one. So there is a classical theory about the death of King Tutankhamun. He was murdered and he was killed by the priests of Amun to get rid of him. The second theory, which is after making a CAT scan, that was nearly 10, 12 years ago, that this hole in the back of the skull, it is a perfect round, which is impossible to be done with a mace. So a perfect round has been drilled in his skull, and he was alive when that happens, and that is because he had an accident. And the proof for that, there is a broken bones, and there is a growth of tissues between the broken bones. This growth lasted for nearly 3 days before his death, and the growth stopped. And that was an evidence that the accident is behind the death of the king. There was an inner bleeding, and there were very good surgeons back in that time, and they were trying to make a bare hole surgery, which is make a hole in the skull. That's his mummy, and make a hole in his skull to extract the blood which is accumulated over his brain to stop the paralyzing. He was paralyzed in these conditions, and he wasn't lucky enough to survive the surgery. But the third one, it could be a planned accident, because there was a very strong foundations of Amon Foundation, Amon Temple Foundation. They want to get rid of this family because of what the father did, and their biggest worry, if this pharaoh lived for longer, he might bring what the father.
It was an ongoing struggle at that time.
And also, there is something to support that. So maybe we can move to illustration number 11.
What
please.
about this before we move on?
That is the discovery of King Tut, and we will come to that. But just to complete this point about something to support what I have just said about the death of the pharaoh, there is illustration number 11. That's this picture from his throne, which is showing him and his wife, Ankh S.N. Ba-Atun. By the way, her name has been changed into Ankh S.N. Ba-Amun as well. So the queen has been forced to marry from that was 60 years old, priest in that time. And before that, there is one of the readings of the history, she sent a message to one of the kings of the Middle East, asking him to send one of his sons to marry from her. And the reason that she has no trust with anybody in the throne, that has no trust with anybody in the palace, I mean. And for a queen to do that, that means that there was a serious causes or behind the death of her husband, that's why she lost trust in anybody around. So there's some of the old photographs from the tomb itself, from the discovery of the tomb. And when it was discovered, that was huge events around the world, because that was one of the first tombs to be discovered intact with a seal on it. It was Howard Carter and Lord Carnarvon. Howard Carter, he spent nearly 5 years excavating in the Valley of the Kings. He found nothing, and that was a big discovery for him, and that's why he was waiting for like a month or more until Lord Carnarvon, which is his financial support, that's Lord Carnarvon, the English guy we are talking about. So the interesting fact here is the first person, I highly admire Howard Carter for his great work, patience to discover the tomb, but the actual person who discovered the tomb for the first time and walked inside the tomb for the first time, he is a young 9-year-old Egyptian boy. He is a water boy. He was hired from the village to bring the water every day. In one day, when he was trying to fix his clay pot, which is zir, the big jar pot, he couldn't because he had a solid surface, which is not troubles, not sands. He was excited. He came from a village, a long distance, on a donkey and taking water with him, but he still had the power and excited, and he was 9 years old, not educated kid, to excavate himself until he found a shaped stone, and he knew that there is a reason behind that here. He ran to Howard Carter, telling him, and this shaped block, that was the first step in the staircase leading to the tomb. So that was an amazing discovery. But then they faced the sealed door. They made a hole in the sealed door after a month from that. And when they made the hole in the sealed door, they couldn't wait to make it bigger, so Howard Carter himself to go inside. They brought the boy again. And the boy has been forced inside the hole, so he can carry a candle and look around, so Howard Carter and Lord Carnarvon, they can see from outside. So he was the first one to walk inside the tomb, and he was the first one to discover, the first step in the tomb. And unfortunately, I find a difficult time to find any picture for him.
Before we conclude, actually, because time is running up, do you have something that we would like to know, or you can tell us more about the reign of King Tut? Because there are a lot of things that we don't know. We know that he was child when he took the throne, but actually, definitely there are things that may be interesting for us to know more about his reign.
So do you know why King Tut, that's another interesting fact. When his tomb has been discovered in the Valley of the Kings, nobody knew that there is a king. His name is Tutankhamun. That's simply because his name, in purpose, not mentioned in the king list, which is made by the pharaohs after him. That's in purpose happened, and that's because of maybe because his father is a troublemaker. They call him the troublemaker back in the ancient history, which is Akhenaten, or maybe because he was young king and he didn't live long enough to make a good an effect. So. And he was only 19 years old when he became the king, and he ruled. He was only 9 years old when he became the king, and he ruled only for 10 years, and that was nearly 3,300 years ago. Hardly any big achievements left by him, and that's why, in a new reading, his history is not considered a great pharaoh, but he became a famous pharaoh because of the conditions of his death and the discovery of his tomb. Another interesting fact about the Valley of the Kings and his tomb, almost every archaeologist excavating the Valley of the Kings from the 18th century until recent, they said that there is nothing to be found in the Valley of the Kings so far. Actually, I don't think so, because there was a Roman tourist visiting the Valley of the Kings 2,000 years ago with a guide. The guide was a priest, which had access to a knowledge back in the time better than us today. And these tourists, he had lots of questions in his notes. And one of the questions, how many tombs in the Valley of the Kings? The ancient Egyptian priest, which was touring him 2,000 years ago, he said 76 tombs.
So there are more to be discovered.
There's still more than 10 tombs to be discovered. And when you go to the Valley of the Kings, you know that the walkway today is not the same level that was silted up, and by the more excavation, there is more chance to find more in the
more
Philippines.
excavations and more discoveries. And we'd like to thank you very much. Thank you very much, tour guide and Egyptologist, Mr. Samir Abbass, for this interview. Thank you very much.
Right, and still we have more to bring you on our breakfast show. So let's move on to our GPS. And actually, every time we try to bring you to a different district across the country, actually, this time we're going to take you to Beirut Street. Let's find out together more about it, and we'll be back.